All right, everyone. I'm Tribune sports writer Andy Larsen here with Utah Utes beat writer Jason Batacao, coming to you ahead of the big matchup coming up this week: Utah Utes against Texas Tech Raiders. Red Raiders. They are. We've got two ranked teams coming in. We've got the big noon kickoff with Fox coming in to Salt Lake City. It is, safe to say the biggest match of the season so far, and frankly, I think probably one of the biggest in recent Utah memory.
Yep.
Jason, it's a big week for fans. First of all, what should they just expect with kind of the atmosphere around this game with the big noon kickoff and everything else happening up at Rice Eccles Stadium this weekend?
Yeah, Big Noon Kickoff is a pretty big deal. I think it's the probably the second biggest TV window other than College Game Day, and Big Noon Kickoff has a pretty big large following. I mean, you got Urban Meyer coming back to town. Dave Portnoy is obviously on the pregame show now, so that's a lot of eyeballs that people will probably be drawing in just because of him. You have Matt Leinart, who's a former Heisman quarterback. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. It's got kind of a college game day light feel to it, and that's no jabs at a big noon, but yeah, definitely a big deal. I think the 10 a.m. kick though is just yeah, it's something.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this is, let me ask you about that. What does Kyle Whittingham think about the 10 a.m. start? Is this football team going to be ready to go that early in the morning, frankly?
Yeah, so Kyle kind of touched on it briefly, two times actually after Saturday's win against Wyoming, and then somebody asked him just scheduling preparation, getting players on a certain schedule, especially when they're coming off a night game. The first thing he said was, a morning game isn't any problem for them. I think Kyle actually maybe even prefers an early kick. He said in the past that he would kick off at 7 a.m. if he could, or something like that. He joked about it, and so I think Kyle's excited about it. I think Kyle's excited about the opportunity to have a national televised game in Salt Lake City, especially with all those eyeballs. So, yeah, preparation wise, it seems like Utah is going to be adjusting the schedule of certain things. Maybe a weight lift to here or a practice here, just to make sure the players are on a schedule and more prepared for the game, and so I'm sure there's a lot of sports science stuff that goes into that, but Kyle mentioned that will be on their radar heading into this game, and I'm sure Utah fans are adjusting as well and making sure they're getting a good night's sleep before the game on a Friday night. So yeah.
That's a good point. And then probably less tailgate time as well, which may mean more eating in the stadium, more time to, I guess, enjoy or hate the University of Utah Rice Eccles concourses. That being said, the university is making changes to the concourse setup to try to improve the experience for fans a little bit. You've been doing a story on that. What have you learned, and what should fans expect again coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, so I'll first start off with some of the concerns from fans that I've talked to. Obviously, the concourse is a pretty big problem for a lot of season ticket holders, just fans. I had a few fans tell me that they're worried about their kids, like they have to hold them by their shoulders because they're worried about them, I guess, quote unquote, like getting ran over by a bunch of fans because of the congestion. So there's real concern about just the concourse, how not wide it is, how just it's kind of like shoulder to shoulder. It's like you're at an airport terminal and you're just waiting to get into the TSA line, and so there's concerns about that. Fans have said that when they go get concessions, they're waiting in long, long lines, and they don't get back until midway through the third quarter or midway through the first quarter, or they're just missing a lot of game time, and so that's a big concern. I know the University of Utah has done a lot of things to kind of alleviate what they call bottlenecking of lines, and so that's when a line obviously just is so packed and has so many people in it. It's just like it's jamming the concourse. Somebody that I've talked to, her name is Jennifer Reed. She's a stadium. She does auxiliary services for the U. She told me that obviously a stadium concourse renovation would take a lot of work and a lot of money. We're talking millions upon millions of dollars, and it would render the U potentially not even able to use Rice Eccles if that were the case. So I think a lot of it is just band-aid solutions. There's grab and go concessions that they introduced. They've had touch and go kind of like soda stations. I know last year that there was a lot of problems with those, but they've added more soda stations heading into this season. But also last season they added it, and they've told me that they saw a lot of improvements. And then just in the game day atmosphere, I've been told that LED lights are on the horizon. You probably won't see them this season, but LED light shows will probably be coming to Rice Eccles in the next 2 years, give or take. That's a pretty big thing on their agenda. Another thing that will be in my story. A drone show will be coming to a nighttime game here soon. So a lot of fans' concerns are being heard. I think just the concourse, it being so tight and the way it was built, just causes a lot of problems for Utah fans. And so, yeah, there might be more problems with that, but I think Utah is listening to their fans. Just some of the solutions, sometimes you just have something and you can only put a band-aid on the boat before, it sinks or you do something about it.
Yeah,
And not that it's a sinking ship, but yeah, it's just something I feel like Utah fans are going to have problems with until, there's a widened concourse or more renovations coming down the road, which isn't a guarantee at all. So,
yeah, yeah. It sounds like they're doing the best they can given the circumstances, but the
right.
circumstances are not brilliant for, Big 12 competition. But let's
Right.
go in and talk about the game. Kind of both phases of play. First, let's get into when Utah has is on the defensive end of the ball, Texas Tech is on offense. You look at this is an up-tempo offense under their new offensive coordinator, Mac Leftwich. They've got a very good, well-respected quarterback, Baron Morton. He's more of a pocket quarterback than Devin Dampier is, but does change kind of what the U will want to do defensively. How do you see that side of the ball kind of playing out come Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a battle in the trenches. It's going to be Utah's defensive line versus Tech's offensive line, which obviously they paid a lot of money for. I mean, they paid a lot of money for everybody, so it's funny saying they paid a lot of money for that position group in general. But I think it's going to be a battle in the trenches on both sides. Can Utah's defensive line, which has been really impressive and led by John Henry Daly on the edge, can they dominate in the trenches? I think it makes it easier for Utah in this case because Baron Morton, sorry, excuse me. He's a pocket passer, so you don't have to deal with a mobile passer in that sense. And a lot of Big 12 quarterbacks are that guys that can escape out of the pocket. And so I think that's a plus for Utah. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think Texas Tech also has a lot more weapons on the outside than Utah does. I mean, Micah Hudson, a former five-star wide receiver, had a weird stint at A&M, went there this spring, was on Utah's radar. I think he came for an official visit and then went back to Tech. Obviously a very talented wide receiver. Tech just lost their starting running back for the season a couple weeks ago, and so that's a factor. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to the trenches, honestly. And whichever team can dominate on the defensive line and on the offensive line, I think probably will win the game. And so yeah, and then flipping to the offensive end of the ball, I
Yeah.
think Utah has a really prominent, dominant advantage. I mean, two offensive tackles that might go in the first round this year. They have really good guards. Jaron Kump's a really good center. I know he's been banged up with a few things here and there, and so um, you know, um, if Utah can get its run game going, which I think is a big part of their offense. Obviously, they've lacked explosive plays here and there, and they've also tried getting that going with Tobias Merriweather and a few other guys. But if Utah can run the ball, which they've done, I mean, they ran for 311 rushing yards last week, and they've averaged plus 250, I think, in each game. I think that's a big key, and if Utah can do that, then I think they have a pretty good chance. But again, it's going to come down to the trenches. And again, Tech spent a lot of money on that defensive line too, so there's a lot of studs there.
Last week it took against Wyoming, it took the offense a long time to kind of get going, and kind of the sense is that if that happens against Texas Tech this week, you run into more problems, right, against much better opposition.
hmm
Do you think that the offense should ramp up to a different level this week? And why do you think those issues happen against Wyoming? And then what do you expect different come on Saturday?
Yeah, it, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what the problems offensively were for Utah in the first half. I mean, Kyle and Devin both mentioned that they just weren't executing on third downs, which is true. They were 4 for 10 in the first half, if I'm not mistaken, and they converted all their third downs in the second half. So there's a clear. I mean, finishing drives was a big thing for them. But it just seemed like the offense was a bit disjointed in the first half against Wyoming. Obviously they want to get explosive plays. They want to throw the ball downfield and they want to have that balance. But it seemed like when Utah prioritized the rushing attack with Wayshawn, with Hunter Andrews, with Nakari Rogers, and of course Devin Dampier, who is the leading rusher, again, this game. I think that they're just a much more pivotal attack. And so I think if Utah can get to that run game quicker than it did against Wyoming, I think there will be a lot of benefits to that. But we'll see what Utah wants to do. Jason Beck said something really interesting this week when we talked to him. He said, obviously you want to have explosive plays, but sometimes that might just not be the offense's identity. And I think, obviously you want to have explosive plays, you want to get your receivers involved, but if that's not Utah's strength, then maybe they just need to stick to running the football, and obviously they have the offensive line to do that. And so we'll see if that snake rears its ugly head this game. I think this is one of those games where you have to be firing on all cylinders because Tech's a really talented team. They have a really good coach. Joey McGuire's a really good coach. And so, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of offensive focus Utah comes out with in this game.
Yeah, two things that you said there that are interesting to me. One on the third down thing. You got every single third down against UCLA.
Hmm.
You're just not going to be able to necessarily keep that up. One of the things
Right.
we've learned in kind of football analytics in the last decade or so is, hey, third down, it's kind of the percentage of third down conversions is going to go up and down. It's going to be kind of variant from game to game. And so, if Utah is average or better on the third downs, I feel a lot better about them than if they aren't. And then, yeah, just the wide receiver core. In order to have those big pass plays downfield, you do need some, playmakers on the on at the wide receiver position. And, I think Tobias Merriweather showed some of that, especially against UCLA, that he can go deep, and obviously the height really helps there too. But,
Hmm.
it's kind of the consistency, and it's about kind of being a consistent threat deep, which I don't think we've seen so far. So we'll see if they're able to include that. But you're right, maybe they are just a dink and dunk offense that keeps the ball for a long time and has these kind of long possessions that lead to points. I think, ultimately if the Utes control the game, control the ball, that's likely to end up in a win.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I think Utah definitely does have weapons offensively. You can make a lot of plays with your tight ends. I think they have one of the deepest tight end rooms in the country. I mean,
Absolutely.
JJ Buchanan's really good. Dallin Bentley's really good. Hunter Andrews has been making plays both at running back and tight end. And so there's a lot of talent on the offense. I think it's just they're lacking in the wide receiver room. And so that's something we'll see probably develop as the season goes on.
It's crazy to think what would this team would be if they had Carson Ryan plus Dorian Singer, right? Like
Right.
it'd
Right.
be it would be pretty incredible. I mean, we still are so we don't know what this team will be like against Big 12
Right.
competition. I think we've effectively learned that UCLA was a powder puff opponent.
Hmm.
Now the real games begin, and that's really
Right.
exciting for us here at the Salt Lake Tribune.
Hmm.
Jason, thanks so much for talking about this game with me, and we'll be watching this game come Saturday 10 a.m. here locally. The Utah Utes against the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.